Welcome back to the terribly named Okay Not Okay podcast. And well, I guess I finally got some retribution against Dr. OK for making me put in all of that extra work by filling in for him on SmackDown and having to do extra wrestling podcasts. So I think he deserved it. So here we are finally to the podcast I'm supposed to do, and we are betting Bash in Berlin. Now, doesn't that just sound wonderful? Anyways, let's start off as always with a recap from SummerSlam. So we went 6-1 with our picks to win, but only 5-2 with our picks to bet. We just were not quite confident enough in Cody Rhodes to take him with the bet at an over 98% chance there. We thought a little better booking might actually get Solo Sikoa to win. Unfortunately, not the case this time, but we still told you that Cody was going to win because it was pretty obvious. Though, man, it just would have been more fun if Sikoa won and then Roman came back. The only downside is that eventually it's going to get really boring if we can never have the WWE title change hands except at WrestleMania. So that's one thing I'm not too excited about so far with the booking in this Triple H era. But hopefully that doesn't always last for long. But for betting purposes, it might just make it easier on us. Well, then, of course, we also lost the World Heavyweight Championship match. I thought Damian Priest was going to retain. It felt like the change to the babyface character just for that match. And with Gunther really stepping up his villainy that last month, that it was just a little too early to pull the trigger there on the title change. But I guess getting the Judgment Day turn all to happen at SummerSlam on the second biggest show of the year is really, a good idea, so I guess I can't argue too much. Nonetheless, it also would have felt like having Gunther win at Bash in Berlin to get the title for the first time would have been the bigger deal. But again, going in as champion is a pretty good second. On the prop side, we did pretty well there as well as we went 6-2. I was pretty surprised to see, or not see, Jake Paul show up at Cleveland Brown Stadium, since that is his hometown, but what are you gonna do? And the other one was I thought Cody Rhodes was going to bleed. It was a tribal combat match, so anything could happen there with all sorts of weapons, so whether it was planned or not planned, there was a pretty decent chance of some blood flowing, but I guess it just didn't happen. But we'll get a second crack at it this time. Nonetheless, all four of those were plus money bets, so we didn't lose you much if you went with us this time. So, well, with that, let's go on to Bash at Berlin, and we usually like to start with a little bit of history, but there is no history, as this is the first ever PLE in Germany, so good for them finally getting their first premium live event. But there are two very important factors that we need to talk about before we get to the matches. Number one, since 2021 and emerging out of the Thunderdome, we of course have had 3 premium live events to be the PLE immediately following SummerSlam. So in those 3 PLEs, first 2021 at Extreme Rules, we had 5 title matches, but 0 title changes. In 2022, at Clash at the Castle, we had 3 title matches, but 0 title changes. And last year at Payback, we had 4 title matches and 1 title change. Now that was the Judgment Days, Finn Balor and Damian Priest defeating Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn for the Tag Team Championships. So let's talk about those 12 title matches and put them into 2 different buckets. The first bucket is when that title was also contested at SummerSlam, and the other bucket is when that title was not contested at SummerSlam. We will not distinguish whether the title actually changed hands at SummerSlam, just if it was contested. So in that first bucket are 8 matches where the title was contested at SummerSlam, and 0 out of the 8 matches had title changes at that following pay-per-view. So this year, that would be the US title, the World Heavyweight title, and the undisputed WWE title. Now, in the second bucket, there were 4 title matches where the title was not contested at SummerSlam. And, of course, the one title change that happened at the following pay-per-view was that bucket. That was Owens and Zayn losing, they did not defend the title at SummerSlam in 2023, which is a little bit surprising, I have to admit, but they were not on that card. There were 9 matches that were on the card, but they were not one of them. So there's only one match that falls into that bucket this time, and that is the Women's Tag Team Championship. So, important factor number 2. That leads us to, since 2021 and coming out of the Thunderdome, there have been 4 PLEs in Europe. And in 3 out of the 4, we have had 1 title change. And in the 4th, there was no title change. So, in all 3 of those premium live events, that 1 title change was indeed the Women's Tag Team Championship. So in 2023, we had at Money in the Bank, Liv and Raquel defeated Ronda and Shayna, which was when Shayna turned on Ronda, but no big deal there, that's not important. Then earlier this year at Backlash, we had Jade and Bianca win the Tag Team Championships against the Kabuki Warriors. And then more recently at Clash at the Castle, we had Fire and Dawn win the triple threat match, taking the titles away from Jade and Bianca. So, on top of those 4 PLEs, we also had 10 other PLEs outside of the United States since 2021, and in 4 of those, there was a title change. And one of those 4 was the Women's Tag Team Championship. But out of those 10 PLEs, that 1 title change was the only time that the Women's Tag Team Championship was on the main card. Yes, in 2 of the PLEs, the Women's Tag Team Championships were contested on the pre-show, but if you only look at the main card, there was only 1 of them. So that means all 4 times that the Women's Tag Team Championships were contested at a PLE outside the United States since 2021, the titles have changed hands. So, I think you know where we're going next. The Women's Tag Team Championships. This time, we'll see the Unholy Union of Fire and Dawn take on Jade and Bianca yet again. Now, we just saw this match on SmackDown a couple weeks ago, and Jade and Bianca won by DQ, so obviously the titles did not change hands. So, with that said, we've got Fire and Dawn as underdogs at plus 100, so they've got a 50% implied probability, while Jade and Bianca are slight favorites at minus 140 for a 58.33% probability. So, with all the stats we talked about, if there will be any change of titles at this PLE, it will be the Women's Tag Team Championships. But let's first talk about Fire and Dawn. Well, they barely have seen competent since winning the Tag Team Championships at King and Queen of the Ring on June 15th when they won that triple threat match by stealing Jade and Bianca's pin and taking it for themselves to beat the future Pure Fusion Collective. So since then, they've only had 1 successful title defense, and they survived the other one by the DQ loss that we just talked about. And they are only 2-2 in all tag matches, with Fire also having a loss to Cargill. And so I guess at the end of the day, I'd say that they just feel iconic, and I'd say not particularly in a good way in this instance, even though I really enjoyed the Iconics in their own weird way, and I think if you let Isla cook a little bit, she could get there a little bit too. But for now, not so much. And let's go to the flip side. Jade and Bianca, they are 3-0 in all tag matches since losing the titles. And more importantly, what do we think here? We know it's going to be Jade versus Bianca at some point down the road. There will be a turn at some point. We know it's coming. The question is when. And will it be at this premium live event? Well, the statistic, if you want to call it a statistic, is that there are 231 days left in the year between Bash in Berlin and the first night of WrestleMania. That is a long time that you've got to draw this out still. A long time. Do we need almost 8 months? That's 7 months and 19 days. Do we need 7.5 months to draw this out all the way to WrestleMania? I guess we could plant a first seed in that, but do we need to do it right now? To me, it is any day with Jade and Bianca leading the tag team division and thus being able to appear on both Raw and SmackDown is a better day for the WWE than it is with this unholy union holding the championships who couldn't even get a match on the show until they became champions. So, to me, if I had the book, well, they wouldn't have lost the titles to begin with, but this isn't about me. So, what could happen? Yes, Belair Davenport seems to be on the same side here as Fire and Dawn. They could interfere and cost Jade and Bianca. We could have that first seed of dissension where Jade or Bianca messes up and costs them the title. But to me, I think we've got to go with Jade and Bianca is just a little bit too far away to really start this up first. I think it would make more sense to start seeing dissension once they have the titles rather than without even getting the titles back here. So to me, we're going Jade and Bianca as our pick to win and our pick to bet. So we also have one prop bet here that goes with this one, and it's a simple one. Will Jade turn on Bianca? And for some reason, yes is at -125, which is 55.56% implied probability. So it's a slight favorite if there were something else to bet, but you cannot bet no on this one. So this is another one-sided prop bet yet again. And I don't know how Jade and Bianca could be the favorites while a yes bet is also a favorite. That is a little bit contradictory here. So if you like Fire and Dawn to win this, just pick the match. Because Fire and Dawn can of course win without Jade turning on Bianca. Like I just said, this could be a first seed of doubt here where it's an unintentional mess up by one of them. Plus, we could have Bianca turn on Jade. Unlikely, but possible. So definitely just stick to the match here. So this is absolutely a no bet for us. All right, so we do have a couple other title matches. Let's talk about those, but based on our history research, I think you know where we're gonna go. So first, the undisputed WWE Championship, we have Cody Rhodes at -6,098.36%, and Kevin Owens plus 1,500 or 6.25% implied probability. And congratulations, Cody, these are the longest odds yet. Wow, I can't believe this one has longer odds than that very first title defense at Backlash. So good for you. I guess everyone really believes in you now. So what could happen here? Nothing. Nothing could happen here. There's no chance. Cody could get injured seriously and can't continue, so he tells KO to pin him. That's the only thing that could happen. Otherwise, this one sure feels like KO plants some seeds for a potential heel turn. He starts to get that feeling back that he wants to be that prize fighter that he always wanted to be and always was right when he entered the WWE. And we even had Corey Graves drop that nickname a couple times in the last week or two, which I don't remember hearing for quite some time. So it feels like it's coming back, but there's just no way he's winning this one. No way. So Rhodes, obvious, pick to win and pick to bet. And we have two props here for some reason. So will Cody Rhodes bleed? We get a second chance at this. Well, surprisingly, I guess the odds makers think that there's a better chance this time for bleeding to happen. Last time we said yes, and that was the underdog pick. This time, no is the underdog pick, as yes is at -160 for 61.54%, and no is at +120 for 45.45% implied probability. So the only thing we need to say here is that the book says blood must clearly be shown. So that is a factor. If it happens but you can't see it, it doesn't count. So unlike last time, there's no stipulation here to make you think that there's any heightened chance of bleeding, right? We had a tribal combat match at SummerSlam, so any type of weapon could have caused a nick, an unintentional nick, if not intentional. We don't get too many intentional bleedings, but certainly, hit a bad corner of steel steps and all of a sudden you're bleeding. It could happen. Here, this is just a traditional match against a friend, So there really should be no animosity to have any blood happen here. So I am shocked at this. So easy pick here. This is a no for us as the pick to bet. And of course, we could see a post-match bloodline attack, so that would be potential for blood, but that's not going to sway us here because our next prop is, will the bloodline interfere in the Cody Rhodes match? Now, we'll specifically note here that the prop says match, so we're limiting it to in the match itself. If they attack after the match, doesn't count. And if they show up at all, I'm not so sure they're going to show up at all, but if they do, it'll definitely be post-match, because the only thing that makes sense here, as Solo Sikoa just said on SmackDown, he doesn't care who wins the championship. He called next. So the best thing for the bloodline to do is to let those two duke it out the entire way, get really tired, really worn out, beat each other up, and just whoever comes out the victor, that's who they attack after the match is over. So if you see them at all, they're going to wait until after the match is over. So there is only a yes bet here. It is at plus 200, 33.33% odds. And so we are yet again saying no bet for this one. And in the World Heavyweight Championship, we pretty much have the exact same thing, as Gunther is minus 5,000 for a 98.04% chance, while Orton is at plus 1,200 for a 7.69% chance. Well, Gunther did not hold the Intercontinental title for 666 days, win the King of the Ring crown, and then win the title at SummerSlam just to lose it a few weeks later. So he has no chance of losing this time. There's no way. He is going to remain your champion. Randy Orton has been great. He has been pretty interesting on the mic, and he's been great in the ring this year. And it would actually be more interesting if there were actually some trades on Raw and SmackDown, and this would actually act almost like a trade with Orton going to Raw and Gunther going to SmackDown. But truthfully, that doesn't make any sense because Rhodes has been dealing with the bloodline, and Gunther would pretty much need to go right into the title scene, so that would just mess everything up. So there's really no way this is happening. Gunther is your pick to win and your pick to bet. But we do have a pretty interesting prop here. If Orton loses, what method does he lose by? Now, of course, if he somehow wins this bet is off, as he would not be a loser. So at least you have that going for you. But nonetheless, as you would expect, pinfall is the favorite at minus 400 for 80% implied probability, while submission is at plus 250 for a 28.7% implied probability. Well, you would think pinfall would be an easy pick here, but of course we did the research here for you, and Gunther has had 11 one-on-one televised matches in 24, and he's won 10 of those, and out of those 10, he's actually won 7 of them by submission, and more recently, 7 out of the last 8 have been by submission. But conversely, Randy Orton is the one that has not lost by submission. Yep, that's right. His loss at King and Queen of the Ring in that King of the Ring final was Gunther's only pinfall victory in his last 8 matches. So pretty contradictory there, right? Then even worse, Randy Orton seems to have not lost a match by submission in over a decade. I tried to quickly go back through all of his matches on the IWD, and sure enough, the first one I could find that said submission was June 24th, 2013, losing in a street fight by submission to Daniel Bryan. Yeah, that's a long time. That's a long time. So what kind of logic here do we have? It's 2 really competing views here. Maybe Orton just refuses to lose by submission. So that would put a wrench into things, picking that. And well, if not, what I really like here is that Gunther was not happy that His match against Orton left a stain, as he said, on his record. Well, one way that there's no doubt about winning is by having someone tap or falling asleep so they can't continue. So I think Gunther puts all of that to bed by making sure that he beats Orton by submission here. And wouldn't it be the proper chef's kiss poetic ending to have him intercept an RKO and turn that right into a sleeper or a rear naked chokehold? That would be perfect. That would be perfect. So, Gunther, listen to us here. Let that have to be the way to win this one. So, we are going with the upset pick here, submission plus 250. In our final championship match, we have the United States Championship Open Challenge set by LA Knight last week on SmackDown. He is at minus 3,000 for a 96.77% implied probability, while any other competitor is at plus 900 for a 10% implied probability. Well, LA Knight paid his dues for many years and is currently the workhorse for SmackDown with the most matches in the men's division with 20, while he's just behind Bianca Belair by 1, who has 21. But nonetheless, he has just been through too much for WWE to give him this prize and then take it away just a couple of weeks later. So there is no chance he's losing this one either. So that said, we're going Knight to win and to bet. But we of course have a prop, which is who will be Knight's mystery opponent. Well, the clear favorite here is Ludwig Kaiser at minus 200 for a 66.67% implied probability. Any other is at plus 100 for a 50% implied probability. And any TNA opponent is at plus 700 for a 12.5% implied probability. Well, when we talk TNA, I think you know that we're talking about Joe Hendry here. And do you believe in Joe Hendry? Well, unfortunately, I don't believe him for this prop bet because we've just not seen any TNA men appear on a main roster event. Sure, we saw Jordan Grace in the Royal Rumble, but all of the men so far have been on NXT only, so I don't expect that to change. Now, interestingly, I think LA Knight was specifically asked about Joe Hendry on a Ringer podcast right before SummerSlam, and surprisingly, he knows him well, he believes in him, and he respects him. So they certainly have a history there together. So it seems like that is a possibility, but not a 12.5% possibility. So let's stay away from that as a long shot. Now for the any other competitor, well, there are a lot of SmackDown choices. Logan Paul could come back, but I don't think he's making a surprise appearance at Bash in Berlin. We could have another match with Escobar, but that would be boring. Why would you need an open challenge for that? Same with the other Legado del Fantasma members. Well, an interesting one would be the return of AJ Styles or the return of Shinsuke Nakamura. Those would be good open challenges. So let's keep those in mind. The most interesting open challenge would be the Bloodline's Jacob Fatu getting more gold for the Bloodline, but I don't think they're gonna go there yet. And again, we don't want to risk taking anything away from Knight. So I think the Bloodline's gonna stick to Cody Rhodes here. And lastly, John Cena would be an amazing comeback since he was really the Open Challenge champion with that US title. So that would be amazing, but I don't think now's the time for him to come back. I don't think we'll see him just yet. So Ludwig Kaiser just makes so much sense. He was the first guy I thought of right when he made that challenge because, of course, Kaiser is from Germany. So let's find a way to get this man on the card. Sure, he could just help out Gunther in the championship match, but that doesn't feel like enough for the very first German PLE in WWE history. So yeah, let's get Kaiser on the card officially here. He will accept the open challenge, which just makes sense. That's really the only way you can get somebody from Raw. So yeah, Kaiser is our pick here for the prop. That gives us two last non-title matches. So we'll start with the strap match between CM Punk and Drew McIntyre. Punk is a big favorite at minus 500 for an 83.33% implied probability, while McIntyre is at plus 300 for 25%. Well, this one just screams traditional wrestling wrestling booking now, doesn't it? You have the heel win the first match, you have the babyface win the second match, then you have the blow off of the blood feud in the third match. And speaking of blood, we have Bad Blood next month in Atlanta, so let's make that happen, right? Seems to be too perfect that those two could face off in a cage or a cell at that pay-per-view. So let's get this win here for CM Punk so we can keep this going. It just doesn't make a whole lot of wrestling sense if McIntyre wins this. It's pretty much over at that point. Punk really has no grounds to stand on after that if McIntyre should win. So he's not going to win. Punk's definitely winning. That's an easy one. Pick to win and to bet at -500. And lastly, we have the mixed tag match between the Terror Twins of Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley against Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan of the Judgment Day. So Priest and Ripley are at -300 for a 75% chance, while Mysterio and Morgan are at +200 for 33.3% implied probability. Well, pretty much the same thing here, traditional wrestling booking, not quite the same line of traditional booking, but a different route. Pretty much says the same thing here, that the faces need to win so that they can move on to the next challenger, next boss, next level up, however you want to say it, but they need to win to be able to keep going and get to their final goal, which for Priest is eventually taking down Finn Balor one-on-one, and for Rhea, that is, of course, winning back the title from Liv Morgan. So if they lose, is there any reason for this to keep going? It feels like the Judgment Day would just have won at that point. They could beat down those two at the end of the match just to drill the point home a little bit more, and that's it. I suppose I'll say it's not impossible for the Terror Twins to not really care about the outcome of the match. They get some weapons involved and they just beat up everybody in the Judgment Day and take a DQ loss, possible, which would then enrage the Judgment Day even more to keep going after them. So I'd give that a 5% to 10% chance of happening, but certainly not the 33.33% you need to feel confident in Dom and Liv. So for this one, yeah, we'll stick traditional here. We've got Priest and Ripley at -300 is your pick to win and your pick to bet. So let's do a quick recap here. We have Jade and Bianca in the only tough call here as winning back the Women's Tag Team Championships. Then we have the easy ones with Cody Rhodes retaining the WWE title, Gunther retaining the World Heavyweight title. Then we have LA Knight retaining the US title. And then, of course, in the non-title matches, we have CM Punk with the strap match and the mixed tag going to the Terror Twins. In the props, we have Jade is not turning on Bianca. We have Cody Rhodes is not bleeding. We have the Bloodline not interfering, at least during the match. We don't care about what they do after the match. And then we have Gunther winning by submission to really nail it home that he is beating Orton for sure. And then we have Ludwig Kaiser as being the man to take that open challenge. So there you have it. It was great getting back at the dock after all of these weeks, and I will be accepting his Disney Ride Every Ride challenge, so be on the lookout for that one. And of course, I hope you have enjoyed the Bray Wyatt tribute week, but Bray Wyatt is definitely one of the main inspirations why I am still here after taking off a few years from wrestling. The Royal Rumble just happened to be in Pittsburgh when I was going to a Pittsburgh Penguins game, and I'm like, oh man, I've got to go to the Royal Rumble. So I started watching then, and the Wyatt family was entrenched in the Daniel Bryan feud with him joining the Wyatt family and then leaving. So that was really one of the reasons why I came back and just have continued to grow and regain the love and love it more every single day. So thank you, Bray, for that, and I truly miss seeing you on our screen. I wish they would have let you do everything that you wanted to do because you had the best ideas of anyone in the WWE. Enjoy Bash in Berlin. Remember, it is at a strange time at 1 o'clock Eastern, so I guess we'll be watching that instead of the first official week of college football. Man, okay, that's nonetheless what we've got to do. And remember not to bet anything that you can't afford to lose. So, I'm the SportsZu, and this has been the OK Not OK podcast.